There's something powerful about opening the door to the past and pulling out real lessons left behind by people who had no choice but to master long-term survival. Before we dive into this guide, I want to say this clearly for every dedicated history buff and survival-minded viewer watching. Subscribe to the channel so you never miss these deep historical breakdowns. During World War II, families didn't stockpile because it was trendy. They did it because their lives depended on it. And you know, the methods they used weren't theoretical. They were battle-tested in the harshest conditions imaginable: rationing, blockade, scarcity, and total uncertainty. The foods they preserved weren't luxury items. They were strategic, durable, practical, and often the difference between resilience and collapse. If you've ever wondered what actually sustained everyday households for years on end, and how those same foods can still work for us today, stay locked in. What follows isn't nostalgia, it's a toolkit. These are the foods that won wars in kitchens long before the front lines ever saw victory. Salted meats were stored because they resisted spoilage and delivered high-calorie protein when nothing else was available. Families in Europe, Asia, and even parts of North America depended heavily on salt curing. Pork, beef, and fish were packed in dense layers of salt inside barrels or crocks, then stored in cellars for months or even years. People today can use the same principle by learning basic salt curing methods, which require only clean cuts of meat, coarse salt, and an airtight container. In a modern application, curing small batches of meat at home is a practical way to add shelf-stable protein to an emergency pantry without relying solely on commercial canned goods. Hardtack and war bread were prized for their ability to outlast normal staples. Hardtack, made from flour, water and salt, was a true endurance food, surviving for decades when kept dry. During the war, households baked long-lasting breads using rye, barley, potato flour, or whatever rationing allowed. Modern preppers can recreate hardtack using the same simple recipe and store it in airtight jars or mylar bags for multi-year reliability. War bread offers the added benefit of being versatile and resource-efficient, making it a smart skill for anyone wanting to stretch limited flour supplies. Dried beans and legumes stayed in family cupboards for entire generations because they were cheap, filling, and nearly immortal when stored correctly. Chickpeas, lentils, peas, and navy beans formed the backbone of wartime soups and porridges. The key to their longevity was dryness and simplicity. Families kept them in cloth bags or sealed tins away from moisture. Today, the same foods can easily outlast a decade when sealed with oxygen absorbers. They provide complete nutrition when paired with grains, which is why they were so heavily relied on in times of scarcity. Wartime families stocked whole grains instead of processed flour because, well, whole grains didn't spoil as fast. Wheat berries, whole barley, oats and corn kernels kept indefinitely when stored cool and dry. Households used hand-cranked mills to turn these grains into flour, only when needed, preserving freshness. A modern survivalist can follow this exact pattern by storing whole grains in food-grade buckets and grinding small amounts at home. Not only does it extend shelf life dramatically, but it ensures richer, more nutritious flour than anything pre-packaged. Root vegetables were essential because they kept for months in cool cellars with almost no processing. Carrots, potatoes, turnips and beets could sit in wooden crates filled with sand or straw throughout the winter. During World War II, many families relied on these root stores for daily meals when other foods were gone. Anyone today with a basement shed or shaded outdoor box can set up a small root cellar system. Layering potatoes in sand and checking for excess moisture is still one of the simplest long-term food strategies available. Dried fruits provided vitamins that weren't available once fresh produce disappeared. Apples, plums, apricots, pears and berries were sliced and air-dried or oven-dried, then hung in cloth bags. These fruits lasted entire seasons, and even longer if kept airtight. In a modern context, drying fruit during peak season ensures you have nutrient-dense snacks and emergency rations that retain flavour and energy value long after grocery supplies fail or become expensive. Canned vegetables and meats were, honestly, the pride of many World War II homes because they offered reliability when ration coupons ran out. Households used pressure canning to preserve everything from green beans to chicken stew. This wasn't hobby canning. It was, in fact, survival canning. Learning modern pressure canning techniques gives today's survivalists the same control over their supply chain. A single weekend of canning meat or soups can produce jars that last anywhere from 2 to 5 years. Powdered milk became a quiet hero because it, supplied calcium and protein when livestock products were scarce. Families kept large tins of powdered milk, mixing it into soups, breads and porridge. It wasn't glamorous, but it certainly kept children nourished through food shortages. Today, storing powdered milk in sealed containers offers long-term reliability and a practical way to fortify meals if fresh dairy isn't available. Honey stayed in pantries because it, never spoiled and functioned as both food and medicine. Wartime families used honey to sweeten bread, ferment drinks, soothe coughs and dress wounds. It remains one of the few natural foods that lasts indefinitely, even without refrigeration. Keeping raw honey in glass jars today provides a guaranteed long-term sweetener and antibacterial resource. Rendered fats like lard and tallow were, truly prized because they preserved calories better than fresh oils. During rationing, having a jar of lard often meant being able to fry, bake or stretch meals in ways others simply could not. These fats actually remain viable for months or even years when stored cool and sealed. Modern homesteaders, they can render fat themselves or purchase shelf-stable options for emergency use. Vinegar preserved everything from pickles to eggs, making it an irreplaceable pantry item, really. WWII households used vinegar aggressively because it added acid that inhibited bacterial growth. This meant pickled vegetables lasted far beyond their normal lifespan. Today, keeping several gallons of distilled or cider vinegar on hand ensures you can pickle surplus produce quickly and safely. Oats were stockpiled for their versatility and because they stored exceptionally well, even in basic packaging. They became breakfast porridge, bread filler, dessert thickener and animal feed when needed. Modern preppers can keep oats in mylar bags for 5 to 10 years with little effort. Cocoa and baking chocolate offered morale as much as calories. Even in wartime, families recognized the psychological value of comfort foods. These items also stored extremely well in tins or wrapped blocks. In a long-term emergency, cocoa can lift spirits and act as a compact calorie source. Tea and coffee were treasured because they provided warmth, energy, and a sense of normal life. Households rationed them carefully, sometimes storing them for years. Keeping sealed bags of both today ensures you have stable, long-lasting stimulants that require no refrigeration. Salt and sugar were the backbone of every pantry because they preserved other foods and lasted indefinitely by themselves. WWII homes bought or traded for salt and sugar in bulk because they multiplied the lifespan of everything else. For anyone preparing today, stocking at least a year's worth of both instantly expands your preservation options. If you found this guide useful and want deeper historical survival breakdowns, subscribe to the channel and share this video with someone who appreciates real history and real-world preparedness.